So I want to say welcome. What we're doing tonight is we are cramming a 6-week course into one informational investment evening. So it's going to be a lot of information, but a lot of fun stuff that you're going to learn that's going to empower you to know how to set healthy boundaries. So I have this really wonderful tool that we can use called Mentimeter, and I'm going to share my screen. So what it does is you can actually look on your phone while doing this. So this will be like following the presentation on your phone. The nice thing about it is you can take screenshots of the notes. So when there's something that pops up that you really like and you wish, man, I could have written that down, just take a screenshot. And then you'll have all of that here and there. I will share it on the screen as well. So how Mentimeter works, and I'm going to share, Kulani is sharing the link in the chat for us. You will see Mentimeter. If you follow that, you will go to our presentation. And I'm just going to share it on the screen as well. Can those that's got there, can you see the screen? It's called Mentimeter. There's a code at the top. If you go to www.menti.com, you just use the code 2885283, and then you will have this presentation. If you can more or less give me an indication that you've managed to follow that on your phone, those who's not zooming from their phones, you will find this screen on. So follow the link, give me a thumbs up, those who can, say that you've come right with Mentimeter. You're actually looking at the presentation on your phone. I'm seeing some thumbs up. The nice thing is we're going to actually have interaction moments. So you would want to join on your phone because there's places that you can vote and share words, and so we can see how everyone's doing. So it's a fun way of participating in tonight. So show me some more thumbs up. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, you can actually, there's a little image that can give a thumbs up. So once you've done that, please show me that you've managed. I see Caitlin's got a thumbs up. Okay. In the chat, same thing, just follow the link. You can open it on your phone or just Google www.menti.com, code 2885283. Okay. Can I start? So the first thing I want you to do, once you've opened that on your phone, you will see there's a little screen that's going to appear now that asks you, what do you struggle with the most when it comes to setting boundaries? And then indicate which one you struggle with the most. The first one is knowing what your boundaries are, because sometimes we don't know. Following through after setting your boundaries, sticking to them. Communicating your boundaries, struggling to say why and what it is, or guilt after setting your boundaries. So go and vote. I'm seeing the votes. You'll see on the screen, there's some votes coming in about what we struggle with when we come to this. They're coming in. Some say guilt, others says communicating it. You can see follow through. Follow through is one of the big things. It's actually sticking to our boundaries. Because when guilt creeps in, we kind of think, I'm not sure if I should stick to this because now the other person is feeling bad and I'm feeling bad, and and then we kind of don't keep to it. So the votes are coming in still. Let's see, I'm going to give a few more seconds just to vote. So interestingly enough, most of the people actually know what their boundaries are, because as soon as it's overstepped, we know. We don't always know why we're feeling what we're feeling, but we know there's a kind of violation that happened. Okay, so most of us is follow through after setting a boundaries. So what we do is we set the boundary and two things happen. Sometimes we set a boundary very extreme because at that moment we want to get control back, and then we actually set a very extreme boundary and then we don't follow through. Or secondly, we start feeling bad and we start feeling responsible for other people. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next screen. You will see there's actually a place that you can type in a word. If I say boundaries, type in some other words of what you think boundaries are, and we're going to see it pop up on the screen as people type in what they think boundaries are. So please share, type in, hit that button. What do you think boundaries are? If you had to explain it using words, what would you say? Limits, safe place. Let's see what everyone else is thinking. So type in rules, protection, restriction, loving and healthy, borders, parameters, security, managing my life. I love it. I love the things coming in. Let's see what else. Safe, restrict, respect. That is a good one. Managing, rules. So if you want, take a screenshot if you think some of these things are helpful and you're liking what you're seeing. Protection. I like that a lot. We protect what we value. We protect the things that are important to us. Okay, so once you've typed in your word, what I want to share is there's two things that happen. The reason why we struggle with setting boundaries is one of two things happen, and I'll share the screen in a minute or so. Is either we had negative relational consequences. In growing up, it would be a parent that kind of sends us a guilt message or things like that. And let me share that with you, because it will be easier if you see this. Psychological and negative relational consequences. Now, when these happen in our childhoods, when we had conflict and boundaries, when we've grown up and there's a situation that arises that we have to set a boundary, what happens is these things pop up. Now, examples of these are getting angry. A parent or so, or a senior person in your life, you know, they would get angry for something that was violated, and then they would have that big snap, screaming, shouting, frustration happening. A second thing is they send guilt messages. It was your fault. You did this. You're responsible. Nagging for you to do something that someone else wants, kind of putting pressure. Withdrawing love. I don't know if who's received that. Once you've haven't done something or have done something that someone doesn't want, what they do is they ignore you. They actually withdraw love to get a result or to get what they want. Blame. You made me angry. It's your fault that this didn't happen. Name calling. Can't you think you're so stupid? You know, those things are rising. So whenever we get to a space where boundaries needs to be set, it triggers all these negative emotions and abuse. So boundaries in our lives, when we struggle with it, comes to these negative psychological and relational consequences. And these doesn't change people. It actually just punishes and causes suffering, but it doesn't actually cause real change. So when we've grown up and we've had this, we actually feel like something is missing, and then guilt, shame, fear, not feeling good enough, not feeling valued, not feeling loved, all these things creep up. So if you like this and you're on Mentimeter, take a screenshot of this. I'm going to go to the next slide. So these things actually never changes people. Negative relational consequences doesn't change people. It actually only causes more damage. So the thing that we need to do instead of that is have reality consequences. And when we set a boundary, we have to have reality consequences in place. And what are reality consequences? So it's loss of time. So if I don't finish my assignment on time, it means I'm losing time in the evening where I could have rested. That's a reality consequence. So I'm losing out on certain things that entails having time to do what I need to do. If we think in the context of kids, time to do the fun things they want to do because they have to finish their chore or their duty. A second one is losing certain things like privileges. Unfortunately, because you haven't done your homework, you're not going to have Wi-Fi for today or for the week. That is a privilege. It's not a right, except in COVID time when there's schoolwork that needs to be done online, then it needs to be there. But I mean, if it gets to playing games, it's a privilege. So losing things in reality consequences, even in our relationships. If you speak to me in a manner over the phone that's condescending, unfortunately, I'm not going to take phone calls until we can speak in a proper manner. So you're going to lose the privilege of speaking to me over the phone. We can text or we can email. That's a reality consequence. It's not a negative emotional consequence. It's just creating the reality. Another one is money. If you are involved in breaking something that's important to someone else, you have to replace it. It's a reality consequence. Screaming and shouting and calling someone some stupid or reckless or whatever is not going to change it. They're going to pay the price in reality consequences. Loss of possessions. My sons used to fight over playing with the one toy, and then I would just take it and put it on the shelf where they can see it, but they're not allowed to play with it until they learn how to share. So then the next time I want to take something away, immediately like, okay, you first, and then I will go. And then they bargain with one another because they lost something so that was a reality consequence. And then things they enjoy. So unfortunately, you won't be able to join us for sitting in the Netflix series. Or if there's friends that constantly causes damage or pain, so unfortunately, I won't be joining for coffee. It's a reality consequence because I'm not putting myself in an environment where I receive damage. And then people they value. So that those are all reality consequences. But when we've experienced negative relational consequences, whenever we have to set boundaries, all the guilt and shame and fear arises. And that's why we struggle. So it's good to understand the difference between the two. And knowing reality consequences, it's looking at the facts. What is the reality in the situation? What is the price to pay when there is damage? And that's why we have boundaries, because we protect the things that we value. Does that make sense? Good. Now I want you to vote. If you look at Mentimeter, what do you, and be honest, because we're not going to see who votes for what, so don't worry, I have no idea who that is. This is totally anonymous. But what is the ratio between sometimes feeling responsible towards people or feeling responsible for people? So let's see how this goes. So if you can rate that, what do you struggle with the most? Feeling responsible for people, their emotions, their consequences, their struggles, or to people for your own stuff? Votes coming in, mostly 2 people. For people. So that's the thing, is we struggle with boundaries because we feel responsible for. Now, an interesting fact in coaching and in counseling, in time spent with people, that I've realized oftentimes growing up, the child was made responsible for the adult's emotions, for the adult's actions, for the adult's emotional immaturity, even sometimes. You are the reason that I'm so angry. You made me so angry. You are the one that broke everything. You are the one that should fix. You're the one that's causing the strain in our relationship. And then what do? We adapt this mold of taking responsibility for other people's emotions, actions, and consequences. And then we end up in this question, why do I feel burned out? But we struggle to say no, because once we've been responsible, when we're responsible for other people's emotions, when we say no, we feel that they're going to fall apart, and we actually feel like we're not going to be good people if we say no. So those things happen when all the guilt and the shame is put on us, and we feel responsible for people. But the truth is, we're only responsible to other people. We're not responsible for them. They have free will. They choose certain things, and with choosing comes certain consequences. Now, one of the things that happens with our kids, especially if we try and protect them from reality consequences, that's when they end up being spoiled. So if my kid breaks something when they're young, teaching them that unfortunately you broke the window, so pocket money for the next 3 months is going to pay off fixing the window. One day when they're grown-ups and they drive into someone else's Porsche and they have to pay the insurance and they have to pay for the consequences, they can't say, well, I'm sorry, I can't do this. So protecting our kids from reality consequences is actually the most damaging thing we can do. Reality consequences are the things that causes us to grow. Protecting our kids from negative relational consequences, that's what we want. And the same in all our relationships. So it's interesting if you look at the votes, it's kind of like 50-50. Sometimes we feel responsible for, sometimes we feel responsible to. And that is the one thing that causes the biggest lack of follow through in our boundaries, setting our boundaries. If you want to take a screenshot of this, if this is one of the only things you remember of tonight, for everything you say yes, you are saying no to something else. I'm going to say that again. For everything you are saying yes, you are saying no to something else. So if someone asks you for something and you're saying yes, you might be saying no to family time. You might be saying, if at work, oftentimes at work, someone says, oh, I'm a bit struggling, then they haven't been doing their part. They know you come and always help. Then when you say yes to them, you say no to the project that's right in front of your desk that you're supposed to be doing because you're helping someone else. We don't have boundary problems. We have value problems. Now, the reason I say that, if we know what we value and what is most important to us, we will automatically protect it. We will put a boundary around it. We will keep it safe. We will make sure that trespassers doesn't come in and damage that which we value. So either we don't know what we value, or we don't value ourselves enough to actually say no. So what I do in coaching with clients is when they struggle with setting boundaries in certain areas of their lives, and you can make, it's not on the slideshow. What you can do is you can actually go look, say relationships, that's the one area that you're struggling to make decisions. Sit down, take relationships and write down 10 things that you value in relationships. It might be companionship, it might be support, integrity, respect, independence, whatever the things are that you value, write them down and then go look at the order of which is most important. Write down number 1, which is the one that you never compromise on. And then on the second one, you put it in order until number 10. And then you actually know what are the things that you value. And as soon as you know the things you value, you can make decisions and set boundaries according to your values. So for those that have joined a little bit late, I'm going to share the link for the presentation that I've done, just again, to everyone. So follow the link. Then you can actually take screenshots of the presentation while I'm presenting this. Now, in life in general, if you want to just do your life values, go write down the 10 things you value in life. Usually it's things like family, relationships, health and fitness, finances, religion, all those type of things. We write down the things we value. And as I'm saying this, I'm sure you're thinking of things that's really important to you. A designer friend of mine, one of the biggest things she values is beauty. So her number 10 value in life was beauty. For me, it would be growth. So everyone's different. But if you write down the things that you value, And if I had to ask you to think of everything that you love, naming all the things you love, how long would it have taken you to name yourself? How long would it have taken you to name yourself? So we have all these things that we value, but if we had to put ourselves on the list, because in the airplane, I don't know, most of us didn't have the privilege to fly recently, but what they do, they've got that tum, tum, tum. In case of the loss of cabin pressure, please attempt to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping children or the elderly. Tum, tum, tum. And we should put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. But what we do is we rush to do it with everyone, help everyone else. But if I die, I will be of no value to anyone else. And the same with values. If I do not put myself as a high priority on the list, I wouldn't have been able to serve any of my relationships, friendships, family, kids, work, if I'm burning out. So I value myself enough. And in the Bible, it even says, love others as you love yourself. So we are the measure. And it's not a wrong thing to love ourselves. But we don't do that because we think everything else needs to be there. But if I do not value that which I actually have to add that brings value, I will not protect it. So we need to understand that we actually, when we love ourselves, obviously I will take care of my relationships. Obviously I would take care of my family because I love what they add to me, but I love what I can give to them. And that is just so beautiful if we think about it. So I'm saying again, we don't have boundary problems, we have value problems. So look at the things that you value. In one of the full day courses that I did on boundaries, a lady asked me, she said, Naleen, what do I do? My kids, it's supper time and they have to come and they're busy with their online games. Now, moms out there, I don't know with you, but usually it's like, I can't leave right now because I'm in a match. And she says, what do I do? Do I leave the food for them till the ants come in and eat it up and it's cold? Do I take away the Wi-Fi? And I asked her, it's actually very simple. What is the thing that you value the most in that situation? Do you value instant obedience? Them responding and coming immediately when you talk? Because then obviously you sculpt the consequences around the instant obedience. Or do you value family time, sitting around the table and actually sharing time together? So if you know what you value the most in that situation, it's easy to put down the boundary. So if we know that, boundaries becomes rather simple actually. So ask yourself when you get into a situation, wanting to know what the right decision is, ask what do you value the most? Do you value integrity? Do you value someone taking ownership? Do you value peace? Because sometimes we value peace, and look, I'm putting it in inverted commas, because we had such negative relational consequences when we were younger. We just want peace. But then there's no ownership, there's no change, there's no taking responsibility. So really, really asking, what do you really value? Then you know how to make decisions according to that. So if you want to take a screenshot, you can do that right now. When we know what we value, it is easy to know how to protect it. So let that sink in a little bit. We are allowed to value things. But in this world, oftentimes people ask us to value what they value. Isn't it interesting when someone asks me to do something for them and I say no, then I'm the selfish one? It is actually so ironic because they're demanding something, they want something for them, and when I say no, I'm selfish. It's very interesting. Manipulation, blackmailing, manipulation, intimidation, and threats. So when my two boys don't want to work together, I would tell them, listen, you're going to lose your phone or your tablet for the next hour if you don't work with immediately. And then they would be very quick to say, Mom, that is manipulation. And then I would just tell them, no, it's inspiration. So oftentimes manipulation is a reality in our relationships that we're facing. So I want to share the screen again, and you can go to your cell phone and go look at this. People use fear, obligation, and guilt to get what they want. A very simple way of explaining it. Someone would come, and your friend that often struggles in relationship problems would come and kind of, ask you to be there for her now. But this is I don't know how many times that she has the same cycle that she's repeating, and you're actually on your way out to go do your morning jog, but she's phoning you in tears, and she wants you to oblige now and listen to the whole story of how this guy's broken her heart. And then she would kind of bring that off fear. Yo, what if so-and-so knows that I was there for you, but you're not there for me, so you're not such a good friend? Or you're not a good Christian. What would people think if they found out that you haven't done this? Or, that last time I was there for you when you had things that was difficult. Or exposing some of your weaknesses. So they're bringing fear to get you to comply. Another one that people oftentimes use is obligation. You, my sister, you're supposed to borrow money to me when I go through a difficult time. We are working together, so it's your job to help me because we're in the same team, even when the other counterpart hasn't done their part. So obligation, it's your duty, it's your responsibility, and oftentimes they throw it in this manner that you feel obliged to, but you actually had nothing to do with it. They just paint it in a way that you need to be obliged to help. And the last one, and I think this is the one that we as humans, especially those of us who have a lot of empathy, struggle with the most. So your brother-in-law has a gambling problem, and he's been gambling and not taking care of his finances, and they are 4 months behind on their rent. And he comes to you and say, please borrow money to me, because if I can't pay my rent, where am I and the kids going to sit? We can't sit on the street. Now you feel guilty for the poor kids that's going to sit on the street because of him not being responsible with his finances. So now guilt is the driving force for us to do what we need to do. Does that sound familiar? Okay. Now it's interesting. So that's what I say. It sounds funny, but you've just been fogged. Fear, obligation, and guilt. They've just used that to get you to be motivated to do what they want to do. So how this whole scenario plays out, first the demand. Okay, if you can't really listen to how so-and-so and I have broken up and how he's broken my heart, I guess it's okay. So now the friend kind of brings the demand, or it can be more severe, like, I'm going to take custody of the kids. I want custody of the kids. So there's different forms of the demand coming through. And then the resistance. In your heart, you really want to go jog that morning. So you kind of resist. You want to listen to your friend. You want to be a good friend, but you don't have the rest of the day to do your jogging if you don't do it in that hour. Now you kind of like, you're battling on the inside. We've all had that, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And then the pressure. Yeah, but I've been there for you when your mom was sick, or threats. I'm gonna take this away from you if you don't help me right now. And then officially the compliance. Okay, you kind of hang up your jogging shoes and then you comply to the fear, obligation, and guilt. Who's just fallen in that trap? I have as well, especially if you have a very, very soft heart. So now the big, most important part of this whole thing is the drama triangle. I don't know who's heard of the drama triangle. Okay, so I'm going to explain this, and it happens so often. In one conversation, whenever responsibility needs to be taken, and someone feels there's one of three parts that comes and shows its face. The victim, poor me. Or the hero, okay, I'll rescue everyone and I'll do anything. Or the villain, that's the persecutor, the person that blames. And in one conversation, you can actually play all three roles. Okay. So let me give you an example of that. So I hate doing dishes. I really hate doing dishes. But then after a while, I will moan and complain and say, poor me, look at all the dishes. I always do the dishes and no one ever helps me. And it's not fair. Or my two boys would fight. Yo, why am I doing packing the dishwasher more than my brother? The whole victim. It's not fair because my boss never gives me a raise. I have so much work and no, it's, don't you want to help me? People at work. A friend of mine, it's unfair and I'm going through this tough time. The typical victim. We've all played it. I've played it, especially when we really want someone to come and help us. And then we have the opposite side of the coin, the persecutor. You never do the dishes. I'm always the only one that's doing the dishes. You're so untidy. You never do your part. They blame, they deflect. And then, oftentimes when there's a victim and a persecutor, in the drama triangle, a rescuer arises. Now, a rescuer can be a third party. So my oldest son would usually be the one saying, okay, he will, just to keep the peace, he will do it. And then next time someone else has to do it because he wants to rescue conflict. Or from victim, we can sometimes turn to rescuer. Okay, I'll do it this time. So let me share this with you, just the typical traits, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion on this. So take a screenshot, the victim, typically, and literally we can move in all three of those scenarios in one conversation. The victim often powerless, dependent on others, avoids taking responsibility, blames, stuck, helpless, poor me, ashamed. They actually seek someone to rescue them from their negative feelings. Those that always have something to complain about. They just want someone to understand and rescue them from all their really horrible times. And interestingly enough, the victim blocks finding a solution. They actually, even if you come up with how many solutions, but this is not gonna, but this is not gonna work, or this is not fair, or this is the other problem I have. The persecutor, take a screenshot if you want this. The persecutor, they're actually the problem. They're the grumpy one. They dominate, they blame, they actually deflect. They actually fear being the victim. They don't ever want to be the victim, so they actually fear that. They dominate with anger, feel lonely, looks for connection, inability to change. They're usually dissatisfied, blames, criticizes, deflects, abuses, uses guilt to control, sometimes uses drug and alcohol to cope, rigid, authoritative, controlling, superior. Okay, so sometimes all of us go into the persecutor mode. You never take responsibility. You always, but if you just look at this and own your part, we kind of like do that. Now, the most interesting one in the whole drama triangle, and I'm sure you've been thinking about people in your life who's played some of these roles. Even at work, you could sometimes just sit and listen to conversations happening, and then you hear victim, persecutor, and the rescuer flying in. Now, let me tell you this. The rescuer is actually the most dangerous part in all of the drama triangle. Because the rescuer keeps the victim because they feel empowered when they can rescue. They're the superhero. But they keep the persecutor too. You can take a screenshot. They ignore actually their own emotions because they just want to rescue the situation. They seek victims to rescue, and you can have the controlling parent, oh, you can't do it, let me. Or the almost rescuing parent, oh, shame, I see you struggling, yeah, let me help you. That often feels taken advantage of, and then that bitter resentment builds up. It's a pain reliever to rather help others with their issues than facing your own. They actually fear not being needed. My friend didn't ask me to help. I'm usually the one they turn to when. Enabler, the martyr, they discount themselves. They need guilt to control the situation so that they know what's going on and they can rescue. Overstressed, and they create codependence. The rescuer enables the rest. Now, the problem with the drama triangle, actually, no one takes responsibility. The only thing that happens is every time there's drama, it just escalates. No one takes responsibility and there's never change. We end up oftentimes being the rescuer when, for example, say dad is the persecutor and he's the grumpy one and kids are the victim, and then the mom jumps in to rescue the kids from, the persecutor being angry, but also they actually rescue the persecutor from being the villain, but then nothing changes. The cycle just repeats itself. And then we get stuck. So now in setting boundaries, if these roles are played, no one owns anything. And if you can't own anything, you can't take ownership and you can't change anything. So how do we get out of that whole crazy cycle? Because it really, really is a lot of craziness. Who's experienced that? And I mean, I personally have played all three roles very eloquently in different scenarios, depending on the one that suits me. So now my youngest is Levi. He's my strongest, very opinionated little boy, very strong leader. So one thing that in my household is I hate picking up clothes after them. But obviously they want clean clothes. Now, I can constantly be the persecutor saying, I always have to tell you what to do. You never take responsibility. No. You will never grow up and be responsible. If you can't even do this now, how are you going to do this in your own household, Or I can be the victim and say, we don't even have a maid in this time and it's so difficult. I'm doing all of this on my own and you never help me, and, kind of play on their emotions to get them to help. Or I can be the overly rescuer. Shame, they're also going through a tough time. It's been COVID. They haven't been seeing their friends. So let me just overly rescue them. Nothing changes. So how do I get out of this? And I have a really very easy step-by-step solution for this. So you can take screenshots as we go through the steps. And it is simple. And I think some of you are going to be like, what? Does this really work? It really does. But it asks of you to have follow through and to deliberately decide to not be stuck in the drama triangle. So here's how we do this. First, have an agreement. Set up an agreement. We have that at work. We have job contracts. Even in friendships, there's certain things that we have agreements on. If I do my part and you do your part, we can do so much more together. Now, a beautiful agreement would be, they don't want to wash washing, I don't want to pick up clothes. So whatever is in the washing basket gets washed. Whatever is not in the washing basket does not get washed because I'll do my part, but they have to do their part. So we have this agreement. Sounds simple? Yes and no. So set up an agreement beforehand and clarify who's responsible for what. So if I'm not able to do my part of the agreement, if the washing machine breaks, obviously I have to renegotiate the agreement. So there's always space to renegotiate, which makes me think of a friend of mine. We had a conversation that oftentimes what we said yes for initially in an agreement, then some of the terms change, and then we feel, yeah, but I'm a person of my word, so I have to keep on saying yes. But the agreement changed. So what happens is what I said yes for is not what I'm saying yes to now. And then we feel guilty to change that. But then we have to renegotiate. Because if what you said yes for here is not yes for here, you are allowed to say, but this is not what I said yes for. But we feel like we're a person of our word, so we have to say yes. No, renegotiate. Now, now little Levi plays cricket on Tuesday, and he comes home late because cricket is a long game, and he's still doing all his homework. And I mean, he went to bed way over bedtime because he had to finish all of it, and he takes his cricket clothes and leaves it next to the bed. Wednesday is washing day. And then Thursday morning, he's playing another match. So what does he need? He needs his cricket clothes. That's white, getting all those green marks out of the cricket clothes. You know, so it looks pretty horrid after the match. Now Thursday morning, he wakes up and the cricket clothes was not in the basket. It is still right next to his bed. Now there's a few things. I can be the persecutor. But why didn't you put it in the washing basket? What are we going to do now? Now I have to wash it. Rescuer, turning over into rescuer mode. I will and take off work and bring it to school before the match. Does Levi learn how to take responsibility? Or Levi can leave it there and then it's not washed and he can turn into the persecutor. You're not a good mom because good moms help their boys and they do the washing and, you know. Or he can play the victim. Poor me, coach is not going to let me play because I don't have clean clothes. What am I going to do? And it's, I'm in this raw situation and I worked so late and all these assignments and all these teachers are so bad for giving me all these assignments, and he plays it. Or he can play the rescue and say, Mom, if you help me to fix this scenario and wash it quickly for me and bring it in break time, I promise I will do the washing for the next 3 weeks. And then he goes into rescue mode. Now, none of that really helps. Okay, and I know the rescuers, you're cringing with what I'm going to share now, but hear me out. What you do, okay, you do not wash the washing. You do not remind him 300 times of the washing. You leave it because we only change when we feel pain or pleasure. So when Levi wakes up and he plays the victim, poor me, I'm not going to play cricket. The coach, respond with empathy. Okay, it sounds very counterintuitive and it's not sarcastically. It's really having empathy. Shucks, Levi, it would have sucked if I didn't have clean clothes for my match as well. I understand your frustration. What happens here is such a beautiful thing because I'm not picking up the responsibility for him. He needs to own it, and the agreement becomes the enemy, not me. But he can play the whole part. He can play the, yeah, but you're supposed to help me. You know how late I worked and how many assignments the school gave me and how the cricket game was far and we came home late and whatever. Sure, it has been a tough time. I understand that. And in your mind, you're thinking the washing basket is 2 rooms next door. It's not such much effort. But showing empathy, it is so powerful. There's even a story of a principal, this old lady, and they were on the rugby field, and the one dad was freaking out at the ref, and he was stomping over the rugby field to the principal, you know, wanting to complain how horrible the school is and how frustrated he is. And she was standing there holding her hat that the wind doesn't blow it away. Do you know what she said to him? Sure, I hear and I understand your frustration. Tell me, what do I do with all your energy? As soon as you respond with empathy, you actually take a lot of the emotional chunk out of the situation. Responding with empathy is as simple as this. It's noticing the emotion and acknowledging it. Sure, I would also have felt frustrated. I can imagine it is quite embarrassing if I have to wear dirty clothes. I wouldn't have liked that either. I understand that you've been working hard and it's been late and there's a lot on your plate. I'm teaching him time management for owning his own stuff. It's hard because I know now on the inside the rescuers are cringing and they were only just like, oh, shame, because he's worked so late. But the same with work. When a colleague comes and says they've been having all these stuff and the boss is just mean and horrible and expecting all these things from them, then you want to rescue. Or your boss comes and hands you something a few minutes, like half an hour before closing time. That's a 4-hour project. Now, what do? Because now the boss can also play the victim and saying his top management only gave it to him now and this needs to be done. How do you respond? Sure, I can understand it's frustrating. What I can do is I can work for the next 30 minutes. I will work and the first thing tomorrow, I will do the rest. Because the agreement was that you work until 5. You can renegotiate the agreement on that spot and say, okay, great, I can help you after hours, but then Monday morning I'm taking off the 4 hours. Then you're renegotiating the agreement. But showing empathy, saying, sure, I can understand it's frustrating. I would love to help, because that's another thing. Oftentimes if people come and they want to throw their stuff on you because they haven't done their part, you can tell them, I would love to help you. I have this assignment, so I can check with the boss if I can do it later and I can help you with yours, or I can help you on Wednesday. But when we've been the rescuer, it is tough to show empathy. But empathy is so powerful. It's a response. It's identifying the emotion and saying, I would have felt the same way. Now, the third thing is stick to the here and now. Now, I can tell little Levi and say, listen, we've had this conversation a million times. You never pick up, bringing in all the old stuff. That doesn't change. And oftentimes they would bring in other stuff. The kids would say, yeah, but last time you also didn't even think about me and you didn't even see that I was struggling and you're not helping me. Bring it back to the here and now. I hear what you're saying, but we're talking about the clothes that wasn't in the washing basket on Tuesday. Constantly bringing it back to the here and the now. Current affairs and the divert happens very quickly. Then it brings in the emotions and all of those things. So step number 4, stick to the facts. Okay? If you put your clothes in the washing basket, I could have washed it. If you renegotiated and said, Mom, I can't do this, would you help me? Then I would have asked you to help me with washing the car on Saturday, and then we renegotiate. But sticking to the facts. Point number 5, avoid at all costs any emotions. Do not include emotions in getting out of the drama triangle. I feel so frustrated. I'm so angry. You disappoint me. we use that one often. Or someone else uses it, and you can, again, then empathy. I can hear you disappointed that I'm not fulfilling what you need right now. But unfortunately, I have this deadline that I have to finish for work. Levi, I understand your frustration. I'm sorry that this is the situation. But bringing in, I'm so angry, you always make us late, and now right before we have to go to school, it's not going to help. Just stick to the facts, stick to the here and now. Do not include the emotions. And it takes a bit of practice because the loop is going to try going again. Getting out of the loop. And then the last one in this, return to the agreement. So whenever you identify that someone else is playing the drama triangle role, get back to being the adult, have an agreement, show empathy, stick to the here and now, avoid emotions, stick to the facts, and get back to an agreement. And sometimes renegotiate the agreement. But this is how we set boundaries. So My boundaries with the washing is wanting to teach my kids responsibility. And that's why I stick to it. And obviously, certain house rules. The other one is tidiness or neatliness. But the biggest value there is responsibility. It's not necessarily neatness. And sometimes we put so much energy into the neatness and we actually miss teaching responsibility with any of our other conflicts. So another thing that is quite helpful when we have boundaries that's being violated, communicating our boundaries. Say someone is speaking very loudly to me over the phone. I can just first of all note and say, do you realize that you're raising your voice? And then when they continue, you can actually in a polite manner say, I understand and I can hear your frustration. I would love to have this conversation in a civilized manner, stating how I would like this conversation to be. I value having good conversations. If they carry on screaming or shouting over the phone saying, listen, I would love to speak to you. So what I'm going to do is I will phone you in an hour's time when we can have a peaceful conversation. Because I would love to speak to you, but not in this manner. If this person continues to constantly always scream over the phone, for example, then you say, I value civil conversation, so we can do this over email. Unfortunately, I won't be. But you don't start with putting the phone down and saying, listen, I'm never going to speak to you again. You start by stating what you value, and then by reinforcing what you value, and then saying, let's renegotiate what's happening here so that I can protect what I value. And then if it's still being violated, listen to this is very important. Setting a boundary is not manipulation. Setting a boundary is saying, this is how I am going to respond when you do this or that. You can do whatever, but I'm going to move whatever is valuable to me to a safer place. So I'm going to do this. You can carry on, but I'm not going to be part of this. So it's not a threat saying you must, you should, or any of those things. Does that make sense? Boundaries is only stating how I'm going to respond. And that is called self-love, loving myself enough to say, this is valuable to me. Now, if I ask you to think about the people that you respect the most in your life, the ones that you respect their time, their effort, their input, anything, how good are they with setting boundaries? How good are they with being clear on their boundaries? And the ones that you don't have so much reverence for, are they usually the rescuers or the victims or even the persecutors, not owning their own part? So if we respect ourselves enough to say no, because we are saying yes to something else, we are actually letting go of feeling guilty when we're not pleasing anyone else, because I'm not responsible for you. I'm responsible towards you for my actions, owning my part. So the second last screen that I'm going to share burnout and boundaries. We burn out when we own more than our own part. Now, this is such a beautiful analogy. If you look at how we build bridges, engineer-wise, you build 50% from the one side and 50% from the other side, and they meet in the middle. There is no ways that with gravity and everything else, you can build a bridge past the 50% mark. If you do that, the bridge will collapse. So in setting boundaries, in relationships, in work, if I do my part 100% of the 50% and you do your part 100% of the 50%, we can do so much more together. But unfortunately, when we start building past our 100%, because I will give you 100% of my part, and I build past it, things are going to collapse because I cannot own your part. But just like that, you cannot own mine. But we get to a point of burnout because we're struggling to say no. We're struggling to say no because we had negative relational consequences while growing up, not reality consequences. We struggle to say no because we felt responsible for, not to. We struggle to say no because we do not always know what we value in that moment. What is the most important thing? And then we can set a boundary around it. So knowing that we are responsible to, knowing what we value, and knowing that ownership actually empowers someone else, enables us to get rid of the guilt. So the last one is, if you have a question, please type it in now. If there's something that's burning that you would love to find out, or something that you have a question about, you're welcome to ask this. I'm not seeing any questions coming through. If you want to, you can type it to me in the chat as well. Okay. Did anyone type questions? Did I miss something? Still busy. Okay, let me give you a few minutes. If there's anything else, maybe if you want to put it in the chat. Okay, here's a good question. It says, what are the false beliefs that are tied up in our lack of boundaries? Now, there's a few false beliefs actually that we harbor within ourselves. For example, I'm not good enough. I'm not loved. I'm useless. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. I'm not wanted. And I would ask people, so when did you make the decision that you're not wanted? And they would say, when my parents put me in hostel when I was grade 1, when my dad left when I was 2 years old, when my boyfriend cheated on me, when my friend said she doesn't play with me. So somewhere there's this place that you make a decision, I'm not good enough. When did you make the decision you're not good enough? When my teacher said I can't do maths. When I didn't make the first team. And when we harbor those beliefs, what happens is we depreciate our own value because we believe we're not valuable enough or worthy enough. And then we allocate worth to others, our spouses, our kids, our work, our everything else, but then we devalue ourselves because we feel I'm only good enough when I perform. I'm only good enough when I get something right. And then whenever I get something wrong, the shame is so huge that I actually withdraw completely. So as soon as we get rid of some of the limiting beliefs that we do harbor, it changes everything. Oh, someone's asking, please say it again. Boundaries is only stating how I will act when certain things don't line up with my values. If you continue to scream, unfortunately, I need to end this phone conversation. So it's saying, if you want to continue doing this, I'm not going to be part of this, so I'm going to remove myself. It's removing whatever is important to me. So there's another question. So there's this question, with having the love language and acts of service, sometimes not experiencing love because they don't get back what they want. Love languages and boundaries. I think a really beautiful part that we actually have is having an agreement, saying, this is what I desire and this is what I need. I need words of affirmation. I need to hear what I'm doing is actually working. I don't know if you know this, but no feedback, especially even in a work environment with your kids at school, whatever, no feedback creates more trauma in the brain than negative feedback. Let me say that again. No feedback creates more trauma than negative feedback, because negative feedback at least means I can adjust something. But if I don't hear anything, especially if I want to hear the words, it actually creates so much trauma, second guessing myself the whole time. So having a clear agreement and saying, this is what I need, and communicating it and saying, I want to hear, and let's have time. Let's make time at the end of the day and drink a cup of coffee together, and then tell me where we're at or what's working. Or, do you know what? It makes my tank feel full if you do the dishes as well. So it's asking in a positive way, saying, it makes me feel loved. It makes me feel appreciated. It makes me feel valuable. What makes you feel valuable? Okay, great. So then every second day I will do the dishes if you like me to rub your feet. I don't know, whatever. But it's communicating and having an agreement and then stating that. But what happens is, if we don't value ourselves, that resentment bucket, you chuck it in the resentment bucket. And then at the point you snap because you feel, poor me, I'm always doing all of this. But we never communicate. So it's actually not fair, because we don't give the other person the responsibility to fulfill some of the needs. I just want to see, there's a question, what do you do when the person was never taught boundaries? It doesn't matter if the person wasn't taught boundaries or not. If you follow what I said in saying having an agreement, and an agreement includes consequences, stating what the consequences would be, stick to it. The question is, why do you stick to it? Because you value you and you value whatever you value. So even if a person wasn't taught boundaries, you can still respond and say, this is how I'm going to act. So if you scream, I'm going to put down the phone. If you are abusive towards me in a relationship, unfortunately, this relationship can't continue. In friendships and all of those places, we have to renegotiate. But Dr. Phil always says, we teach people how to treat us. So whatever we accept, we're actually communicating our value. If we accept certain bad behaviors, negative stuff, we're actually communicating our value and what we value. Again, you can respond with empathy and say, man, I can hear your frustration, but let's have a civil conversation and let's talk after 5. Empathy again, you can do all of those things. Let's see, there was another question. I hope that helps. So even if the other person doesn't have boundaries, you protecting what you protect makes a big difference. How do I draw a line between a favor and being manipulated? Oh, that's a good question. Do you know what? What do you value? Oftentimes, we value the benefit of the friendship so much that we actually pay the price in who we are as a person or something else. So drawing the line in the difference between a favor and manipulation is, whatever you're saying yes to, you're saying no to something else. And are you willing to pay the price? Another thing about manipulation and a favor, there's a big difference for me. Manipulation is, I'm the victim and I'm throwing all the responsibility onto you. You need to resolve it for me. And they're not willing to do anything. I need to pack and move. Okay, I'll come and help you pack. But they want to use your bucky. You need to pay the petrol. If they're not offering to what their part is, then what are they expecting you? If you're supposed to be doing 90% and they do 10%, then they're not owning their part. So you can ask the question, what do you value? What are you saying yes for? Doing a favor, because next time you might need a favor. But that's still because I value helping someone in a crisis, especially if I can, because I have the ability. Next time I know whenever I have a crisis, they can help me. But it's not a driven by guilt. So also asking the question, manipulation, intimidation is always has fear, obligation, and guilt. We don't make decisions out of fear and obligation and guilt. We make decisions out of faith, out of understanding our worth and being driven by that. And again, love others as we love ourselves. So loving others, obviously we do make sacrifices, but those are choices that we make with a joyful heart. It's not things we do because we fear or we feel guilt or we feel obligation. It's because it's something I chose to do. Let's see, there's another one. I hope that answers the questions. Okay, so this is more saying, it's not really a question, but what happens is you kind of lose yourself so much in making everyone else happy. We're so used to playing the part in making everyone else happy that no one actually knows that on the inside, I'm dying a slow death. Because what are you saying? Every time, I do not count, I do not count, I do not count, I do not count. How long can you say that to yourself? Because if you do not count, then why would you want to make everyone happy if you feel you don't even have value to add to anyone's happiness? You do count. You are valuable. You are worthy. You are loved. Your happiness counts too. And that is one thing that, and I know some of you joining doesn't even know, but we're part of Doxodeo, which is a church. And one of the things that for me is so beautiful about the word is the one thing that stood out with Jesus is wanting to end suffering. And oftentimes there's so much suffering on the inside that we just feel we have to because we deserve suffering, because we had so much suffering in our past. We recreate suffering in the now because that's the only known thing that we have. But that is not our value. And especially if we were told to keep everyone else happy, if we had a really emotional person growing up, one of the adults especially in our lives, we feel we have to keep them happy. But we're not responsible for other people's happiness. We're responsible to them, not for them. There's a question saying, any advice in rediscovering your own values? Go sit and make a list. Go make a list and then reorder it. And if you don't know how to order it, say adventure and health is on my list. If I had to choose one of the two, then obviously I would choose health first, because if I'm not healthy, I can't go on adventures. And then and then you order your list and saying that these are the things that I value. And you can do it as a family. You can do it even in your friendships, because we communicate from things that we value. Sure, there's a difficult question here. It says, is there a way to implement boundaries with someone that's feeling suicidal? First of all, make sure that they have the right supports, professional support especially. That is most important. So making sure they have a support network around them, because it stays the professional support, their family, and their responsibility. So first of all that, and then secondly, knowing when to refer back. So even if they struggles with that, refer back to the family or to the professional person that's walking the process with that person. Because being suicidal, if you own their part, it's also not valuing them actually. They need to own their part. There's a difference between supporting and owning. Let me just check the questions again. That's pretty much it. If there's any more questions that anyone wants to know. So I want to ask if you are comfortable just to switch on your camera, because we're basically at the end of our evening, and I just want to say hi to some of the faces. I want to find out if this has been helpful. Like I said, this is a 6-week or a full day investment where we actually go through setting out what you value, setting out the struggles and boundaries, going into depth about the drama triangle and the roles people play, manipulation and guilt, and how that plays a role. So this is a full day investment actually that I squished into just giving you some tidbits of advice and help. So I just want to see, was this helpful? Is there anything else that you might want to know? I have a little bit of notes that's a bit more in-depth than the ones that I just shared now and on the PowerPoint. Is there anyone that would like, should I mail that to you? Would that be a powerful tool to kind of re-go through this?
Yes, please.
Okay. And then if you would like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the mail to everyone that's on this. We will have, when COVID is settled and everyone is allowed to meet in public, because we were actually supposed to on the 23rd have a full day investment, but just with everything else, exposure and having lunch and eating together and having people, you know, I think we were about 40 people last time in one venue is just for me for a whole day, just not worth the risk. So we decided that we're going to postpone it. If we have an investment for a full day or over 6 weeks, would you be interested? If I mail you, don't you just want to send a mail back and say, we would like to have a part of that and actually go through it myself. And then you can see where the things are that you're struggling with, why you're struggling, and how to put it in place. So I'll send that. And we will continue communicating. So if there's anything else, any other questions, maybe anyone wants to ask, or anything that stood out, I love feedback. Like I said, no feedback is worse than, so if anyone maybe wants to share something that stood out for them today, I would love to hear. So please, if you want to unmute, share something, that would be lovely.
If I can say that the drama triangle really stood out, I never thought of it that way, that there's a victim and a villain and a hero, although I know that you do play sometimes the victim and the villain, but or the hero, but I've never thought of it, you know, explained like this. So that really stood out for me.
And it's actually so simple. We've been stuck in the triangle so long that we recreate it. And we play all the parts, but it takes a little bit of practice, but once you get it right in the empathy and sticking, and it is actually so releasing. But thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So I think then we have drawn to an end of this evening. I'm going to mail you all the notes. If you have any further questions, or if, like, for example, the person's stating about the suicide and you know, please ask for help. You do not have to walk all these things alone. And if you're struggling with your boundaries, make sure you get to someone that can set out your values, see a coach, see a counselor, but walk out these things, because as soon as we have those in place and we know what we value, I tell you, our lives change. It makes making decisions easier, getting rid of the guilt, the follow through. And you know what? We live effective lives. So I want to thank you for your time and taking out the evening for being here. We will then let you know when we do this full day course, or over 6 weeks, depending on which one comes first. Then I'll mail you. But please let me know. And I'd love to, if there's something that stood out and you want to send some feedback, please respond on the mail. Feedback is beautiful. If there's something we can change, that would be beautiful. That would be perfect as well. Thank you so much. So please contact me on my email. Have a lovely evening. If you want to still stick around a little bit and ask questions, I'll be here for a few more minutes. Those that needs to go, I know it's a school night, so you can wait, you can go, and you're welcome to be released. Thank you very much.
Thank you.